Namaste and welcome once again to this course on Introduction to Basic Spoken Sanskrit. Today we are going to look at lesson number 7, and which has to do with learning how to count and read the time. So the objectives, as mentioned in the title itself, is to learn how to count in Sanskrit up to 100 and a little more, but up to 100 fully well, and then also to learn how to read the time, and finally to understand the relationship of counting and the gender of its objects. So like you learn counting in any other language, let's do it in Hindi. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In Bengali it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In Tamil it's completely different. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'll try to give you a little bit of the sounds of the counting in different languages. So let's see what it sounds like in Sanskrit. So just see me and see if you can just capture the sounds first without looking at the screen. Okay, so close your eyes and just repeat the sounds after me as I say them. Ekam, dve, ekam, dve, trini, ekam, dve, trini, chatvari, ekam, dve, trini, chatvari, pancha. Will you try saying that with me now? Ekam, dve, trini, chatvari, pancha. Next, shat. Shat. Notice the tongue that's going up. Huh? Shat. Sapta. Shat. Sapta. Ashta. Shat. Sapta. Ashta. Nava. Shat. Sapta. Ashta. Nava. Dasha. Got that? 10. Now we'll try saying it from 6 together. Shat. Sapta. Ashta. Nava. Dasha. Yeah? Got that? Now let's see if you can say it from 1 to 10. So, ekam, dve, trini, chatvari, pancha, shat, sapta, ashta, nava, dasha. Got it? Can we try doing it reverse? Dasha, nava, ashta, sapta, shat, pancha, chatvari, trini, dve, ekam, shunyam. Got that? 0. Once more backwards. Dasha, nava, ashta, sapta, shat, pancha, chatvari, trini, dve, ekam, shunyam. Great. Now let's see if we can take a deep breath and say the whole thing in one breath. Will you try that? I'll demonstrate it and see if you can follow me after that. Okay, so take a deep breath. Ekam, dve, trini, chatvari, pancha, shat, sapta, ashta, nava, dasha. Your turn. Got it? Very good. So now what we'll try and do is I will just show you the numbers. We'll play a small game. I'll show you the numbers on my finger and see if you can get them. Let's start. Dasha, Nava, Ashta, Shat, Trini, Chatvari, Sapta, Shat, Sapta, Pancha, Dve, Ekam, Shunyam. Got it? Very good. I'll just count now from 1 to 30 and familiarize you with the different sounds of the different numerals. And since it's a video, you have the advantage of going back over it as many times as you would like and familiarizing yourself with these sounds. So, ekam, dve, त्रीणि, चत्वारि, पञ्च, षट्, सप्त, अष्ट, नव, दश, 10. Next, एकादश, द्वादश, त्रयोदश, चतुर्दश, पञ्चदश, Shodasha. This is a very different sound. Shodasha, Saptadasha, Ashtadasha, Navadasha, Vimshatihi. So here Vimshatihi is 20. Now you will notice that there are certain patterns in the way the counting happens, and therefore I haven't written out every single numeral because I want you to start listening to, or rather remembering, recollecting the logic of the patterns of the sound formations, of the numerals that we have. So what I've written out is only the ones where there is a certain difference. So we have Vimshatihi. So the next one would be Ekavimshatihi, Dvavimshatihi, Trayovimshatihi, Chaturvimshatihi, Panchavimshatihi, Shadvimshatihi, Saptavimshatihi, Ashtavimshatihi, Navavimshatihi, Trimshat. Trimshat is 30, and sometimes we also have this sound as Una Trimshat, which means 1 less than 30, or Una Vimshati, which means 1 less than 20. So instead of Navadasha, you might get Una Vimshatihi. Similarly, instead of 29, which is Nava Vimshatihi, you might get Una Trimshat. So don't be surprised. Moving on, let's look at the numbers from 31 to 80. We have Ekatrimshat, Dvatrimshat. The next one is different. Trayastrimshat, Chatustrimshat. The same again. Panchatrimshat, Shat-trimshat, Saptatrimshat, Ashtatrimshat, Navatrimshat, and 40, Chatwarimshat. Say that. Chatwarimshat. Very good. We continue. Ekachatwarimshat, Dvichatwarimshat, Trichatwarimshat, Chatush-chatwarimshat. Then the same. Panchachatwarimshat, Shat-chatwarimshat, Sapta-chatwarimshat, Ashta. Unlike in the previous ones, we have Ashtatrimshat. This one is Ashta-chatwarimshat, Nava-chatwarimshat, Panchashat. Got that? Panchashat. 50. Half century. Let's move on. It gets simpler after that. So it's Ekapanchashat, Dvipanchashat, Tripanchashat, Chatushpanchashat, Panchapanchashat, Shadpanchashat, Saptapanchashat, Ashtapanchashat, Navapanchashat, Shashtihi. Shashtihi. You have Shashti Abda Purtihi when you attain 60 years of age. So Shashtihi is from there. So Shashtihi meaning 60. Going ahead. Ekashashtihi, Dvishashtihi, Trishashtihi, Chatushashtihi, Panchashashtihi, Shatshashtihi, Saptashashtihi, Ashtashashtihi, Navashashtihi. And then we see Saptatihi. It's the third word in the last line. Saptatihi, which means 70. Going on. Ekasaptatihi, Dvisaptatihi, Trisaptatihi, सप्ततिः, पञ्चसप्ततिः, षट्सप्ततिः, सप्तसप्ततिः, अष्टसप्ततिः, नवसप्ततिः, अशीतिः, 80. Okay, it's a grand old age, it's a grand old number here when it comes to age especially. Ashitihi. Now because the word ashitihi starts with a vowel, it starts doing sandhi with the other numerals that come before it. So we have ekashitihi, dvayashitihi, trayashitihi, chaturashitihi, panchashitihi, षडशीतिः, सप्ताशीतिः, अष्टाशीतिः, नवाशीतिः, नवतिः. Got that? 90. Navatihi. And then moving on to the last decade before the century happens. Ekanavatihi, Dvinavatihi, Trinavatihi, Chaturnavatihi, Panchanavatihi, Shannavatihi, Saptanavatihi, Ashtanavatihi, Navanavatihi, Shatam. So in all the cases I have been talking about, Navatihi. I have been emphasizing it. But actually you can just do Navatih or Ashitih, Vimshatih. So let's go down from the beginning. It's Dasha, Vimshatih, Trimshat, Chatvarimshat, Panchashat, Shashtih, Saptatih, Ashitih, Navatih, Shatam, century. Okay, now let's see what happens after that. What when you add more to that? It is Ekadhika Ekashatam or Ekadhika Shatam, one more than 100. Then Dvayadhika Ekashatam, Trayadhika Ekashatam, Chaturadhika Ekashatam, Panchadhika Ekashatam, Shadadhika Ekashatam, Saptadhika Ekashatam, Ashtadhika Ekashatam, Navadhika Ekashatam, Dashadhika Ekashatam, and it continues, so on. So if you had to have 20 more than 100, you would say Vimshati Adhika, which would be Vimshatyadhika Ekashatam or Vimshatyadhika Shatam. Go on like that, and then we have the different hundreds. So we have Dvishatam, then Trishatam, Chatushatam, Panchashatam, Shadshatam, Saptashatam, Ashtashatam, Navashatam, 1000, Sahasram. Okay, Sahasram is a big number, 1000. But now just one thing here, you can try playing games with yourself and seeing if you get the numbers right, but then that you do it in your own leisure time. What I'd like to do next is just to draw your attention to the fact that in Sanskrit, the first 5 or rather the first 4 numbers vary according to the gender of the object it is denoting. So I have a song here for you, and I'll give you an example and then we'll look at the song. So if you have one boy, it is Ekaha Balakaha. One girl, Eka Balika. One flower, Ekam Pushpam. Got it? So when we are counting Ekam Dve Trini, we are actually counting in the neuter form. So here I have the song for you. Have a look at it. It's a little funnily worded song because it's talking about the male crow and the female crow initially, and it's talking about the fruit pushpam, the flower, the pushpam, and then later on it brings in the phalani, which is the fruit, the fruits, many fruits. So let's look at it and just follow along. It's just to give you a funny way of learning this gender with numbers. So, Ekah Kakah, Eka Kaki, Ekam Pushpam, Dvau Kakau, Dve Kakyau, Dve Pushpe, Trayah Kakah, tisrah kakyah, त्रीणि फलानि, चत्वारस्ते, चतस्रस्ताः, चत्वारितानि. Alright, now let's look at the screen and I'll get you to do that. So just a few things that we haven't yet touched in the class and we look at in our following sessions is that here you have the dual case, which is with the dvau kakau, and in the feminine it is dve kakyau, and the neuter it is dve pushpe. And then in the plural, the word kakaha becomes kakaha. The kaki ending with the e becomes kakyaha. And the neuter pushpam becomes, I've taken another word which is phalam, becomes phalani. And in the fourth line you have chatvaraha te. Te is the plural pronoun. So saha becomes de or te. Chatasraha taha in the feminine and chatwari tani in the neuter. Don't worry your head too much about this because we will look at them in greater detail in the coming session. So what is important to do in this song is let's look at the wordings and also sing along with me. Ekah kakah, eka kaki, ekam pushpam, dvau kakau, dve kakyau, dve pushpe. Trayah kakah, tisrah kakyah, त्रीणि फलानि, चत्वारस्ते, चतस्रस्ताः, चत्वारितानि. Got that? Wasn't that fun? Alright. So we've just looked at the song with the different numbers and how they change according to the different genders. So here we have a slide, I have a slide for you which gives us in the first column the regular Roman numerals, how they are written. In the second column we have the root forms of the different numbers as they are pronounced. So, eka, dvi, tri, chatur, pancha, shat, saptan, ashtan, navan, dasha. Very interesting. And then we have in the third column, we have the way in which these numerals are written in Sanskrit. So, as you can see, the ekam, dve, trini, chatvari, pancha, shat, sapta, ashta, nava, dasha. And you would also probably recognize these numerals from your the way the numbers are written in many of your regional languages, for the Indians at least. And then we have in the next three columns the way in which these numbers are undergo certain transformations depending on the gender of the word. So we had ekaha, eka and ekam, then dvau, dve, dve, trayaha, tisraha, trini, chatvaraha, chatasraha, chatvari, and then pancha, 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 shat, shat, shat. So you see, after pancha, it doesn't change. The gender of the word doesn't matter. So this I thought was could be a very helpful slide for you to look at the entire picture of the numerals in a simple way. Now that you have learned how to count, another very important activity is, associated activity, is to be able to read the time. So our next part will look at reading the time. Kaha samayaha. What is the time? Now, the question can also be asked with a greater precision of pronunciation, which is kah samayah, where you are trying to do the aspirated visarga sound in its natural form, or you can do it with an emphasis, which is kaha samayaha. What is the time? And the answer is, it is 5 o'clock now. So now is idanim pancha vadanam. Pancha vadanam is the equivalent of o'clock. Idanim pancha vadanam. Okay, so now you tell me, kah samayaha? Idanim shad vadanam. 7. Idanim sapta vadanam. Uttamam. Next, if it is 5:15 or 5:15. So the Sanskrit word for quarter is pada, which normally refers to the foot or the leg, but it can also mean a quarter. So sa pada pancha vadanam. Sa in Sanskrit means with, pada is a quarter. So, sapada pancha vadanam. Kaha samayaha? Idanim sapada pancha vadanam. Uttamam. Now, if you wanted to say 6:15, sapada shad vadanam. Uttamam. 8:15, sapada ashta vadanam. Fantastic. Uttamam. Now, let's look at half. 5:30. So, the word for half is ardha, meaning half. And with a half will be sardha. So, sardha pancha vadanam. Kaha samayaha? Sardha pancha vadanam for 5:30. Now, 6:30, sardha shad vadanam. Uttamam. 10:30, sardha dasha vadanam. Very good. 9:30, sardha nava vadanam. Uttamam. Now, moving on to the next one. How would we say quarter to 6? So, 6 is shadvadanam, the quarter is pada, and in Sanskrit we will say a quarter less than 6 o'clock. Okay, so a quarter less than the next hour. So, if you are talking about 5:45, it is a quarter less than 6 o'clock. So, pada means less, or no, pada means a quarter, una means less. So, we become pada una. When you put the words together, it becomes padona shad vadanam. So, 5:45 is quarter less than 6 o'clock, and therefore padona or padona shad vadanam. Uttamam. So, how would you say quarter less or quarter to 7? Padona sapta vadanam. Quarter to 8? Padona ashta vadanam. Uttamam. So, now how does one say 1 o'clock? Eka vadanam. 2 o'clock? Dvi vadanam, not dve vadanam, because when we are counting we are doing ekam, dve, trini and chatwari. So, if you had to say it's 1 o'clock, very normally based on what you have learnt in counting, you would have said ekam vadanam, dve vadanam, trini vadanam and chatwari vadanam. But when we are saying the time, it doesn't work like that. We have to fall back on the root words of each of these numerals, and then we would say add the vadanam to it. So, for 1 o'clock it is eka vadanam, 2 o'clock dvi vadanam, 3 o'clock tri vadanam and 4 o'clock chatur vadanam. Uttamam. So, I will just do a small game for you and see if you can combine it with what we have just done. And so, if you had to say it is 2:15, what would it be? Sapada dvi vadanam. Uttamam. How would you say 3:30? Sardha tri vadanam. And how would you say 4:45 or quarter to 4? So, quarter to 4 will be padona chatur vadanam. You got that? And the final one with the 1. So, if you wanted to say it's 1:05, how will you say that? Panchadhika ekavadanam. Uttamam. So, I hope you've got a hang of it. The more you practice it, the more natural it's going to be for you. And coming to a quote on India which talks about the important contributions that India has made in the domain of numbers and etc. One of the very remarkable facts of the Indian culture, especially if you look at Indian mathematics, is that they have conceived of numbers as large as 10 to the power 421. And when talking of small numbers, they have conceived of numbers as small as 10 to the power minus 33. And it is said that this 10 to the, they have in fact very systematically got names for the different numerals that are represented by 10 to the power 1, 10 to the power 2, all the way up till, at least as far as I know, it's 10 to the power 55 is something like tal-lakshanam, which means it indicates that, the size of that. And then 10 to the power 421. It's huge. Okay, so there are some very powerful quotations on the kind of contributions that have been made in the Indian culture in the domain of mathematics and how that has influenced world thought. So here we have a saying by Leopold von Schroeder, who was a German Indologist, and he, as you can see, in 1884 he published Pythagoras and the Indians, a book on that. So he says, nearly all the philosophical and mathematical doctrines attributed to Pythagoras are derived from India. Think about that. And then another very famous scientist who changed the way in which we look at the world in many ways, he said, that's Albert Einstein. He said, we owe a lot to the Indians who taught us how to count, without which no worthwhile scientific discovery could have been made. Just pause on that and just try and think of the implications of a statement like that. Okay, so with these few words, I will leave you to think about the wealth that is available in Sanskrit literature. And this Sanskrit literature has, it seems that there are so many texts that are yet to be analyzed, yet to be decoded, deciphered. A friend was saying that there is something like between 4 million to 30 million texts, manuscripts that are yet unknown, of which at least 10% is scientific literature. So there's a lot for us to do, and using Sanskrit as a key to access that tool. So please study it with your heart and mind and try and open up these unknown treasures to the world. Dhanyavada.